رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله بارئ الخلائق الأجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، سيما مولانا صاحب الأمر والزمان روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد. شهر Ramadan, Ikhwani, a month which is supposed to be an exercise, a spiritual exercise that gets us towards a certain position. Yani, understanding the philosophy of fasting. It is important that as we approach this halfway mark within Shahrul Ramadan, we see that over these last 10-11 days, what have we gained by experiencing hunger and thirst from the time of Fajr till the time of Iftar? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says within the Quran, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Kutiba alaykumus siyam, kama kutiba alal ladhina min qablikum, la'allakum tattaqun. The goal of Shahrul Ramadan, the purpose and the philosophy behind fasting is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, perhaps you may gain taqwa. Perhaps, la'allakum, yani, there are those who gain taqwa and there are those who don't gain taqwa from this. Therefore, a person needs to monitor himself day by day, from this first day, second day, third day, today, 10th, 11th of Shahrul Ramadan, do I feel within me the level of taqwa is greater than what it was yesterday or day before yesterday or when Shahrul Ramadan started? If I do not feel this increment in spirituality within my heart, I do not feel this increment in taqwa, then I need to sit back and review the validity of my fasting and whether I'm actually fulfilling the purpose which was ordained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you find that taqwa and the issue of taqwa, there is an entire network of ayahs within the Quran that speak about taqwa and every other satellite issue connected towards taqwa. See, for example, Shahrul Ramadan, the goal of fasting, we said is what? We are all together. Insha'Allah. These fasts are long and it is towards the end. Sometimes, I'm talking to myself and you are looking at me and our mind is in our iftar. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Tayyib. For the goal of Shahrul Ramadan, taqwa. You find that when you begin the recitation in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. This kitab, this book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a source of hidayah, a source of guidance for who? For the muttaqeen, those who have taqwa. And in this other verse you say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained upon you fasting. Why? So you may gain taqwa. And in the beginning verses of Surah Al-Baqarah we said that the Quran is a source of guidance for those who have taqwa. Yani, if you join these two verses together and you arrange the if you arrange the major premise with the minor premise, you join the two verses, the natija is what? The conclusion is that Shahrul Ramadan is an exercise which allows us to understand, is an exercise which allows us to gain hidayah from the Quran. Yani the prerequisite of seeking guidance from the Quran is taqwa. So long as we don't meet that prerequisite, we can't seek guidance from the Quran. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we have ordained upon you fasting. So this exercise from Fajr to the time of Iftar, you are fulfilling this prerequisite condition, which then allows you to understand the kitab of Allah Azza wa Jal. Therefore you find that the institution of Sawm and the institution of Quran go hand in hand. You will find that even reading Quran and pondering over the Quran in Shahrul Ramadan has its own barakah, as opposed to if you were to recite Quran in any other month within the year. And to recite Quran throughout the year is barakah. But Shahrul Ramadan has this khususiyah. Tayyib. So the goal of fasting is taqwa. And the goal of taqwa in that, so long as you have taqwa, you can seek guidance from the Quran. What is the sifat and the character of the muttaqeen, those people who have taqwa? Now we need to understand what other characters we need to inculcate or cultivate within us in order to be from the muttaqeen. Because so long as you have taqwa, you're able to gain this hidayah from the Quran. See, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in regards to the sifat, the characters of the muttaqeen. Number one, الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. Those who believe in the power of the unseen. These are those people whose minds are free from the shackles of atheism and materialism. الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ, who understand and believe in the existence of a superior being who is the creator of everything within existence and is this creator of this entire system of cause and effect, who can alter the system of cause and effect when he wants and if he wants. الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. The meaning of this is that the mu'min is not a slave of empirical evidence. You know, sometimes you have these so-called intellectuals, thinkers, philosophers who only believe in a concept so long as you can prove it to them. They need to have an actual physical material chain of evidence in order to believe in this concept. So long as there is empirical evidence, they believe in this. Allah says, La. Muttaqi believes in ghaib. You have this external power that overcomes this entire sequence of empirical evidence. Number one, alladhina yu'minuna bil ghaib. Number two, wa yuqimuna salat. Salat amududdin. The wasiyah of Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allah fi salatikum. And we have had almost 30-40 lectures on salat over the last year. So number two, salat. Number three, وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. And this is the place of our discussion today. The sifat of the muttaqeen is that they spend in the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that which has been given to them in their rizq. So you find that from the 3 or 4 characters of the muttaqi that you have over here, the person who has taqwa, believes in the ghaib, recites the salat and spends from his wealth. These are the characters of a person who has taqwa. If you have taqwa, you are able to seek guidance from the Quran. So long as you don't have taqwa, you can't seek guidance. And fasting allows you to build the power of taqwa, which allows you to gain hidayah from the Quran. Ahsantum. Now based on this, so as you are fasting and building your taqwa, you need to have these sifat within you. Belief in ghaib and perfecting your salat and spending in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you find that within the Quran, there is an entire network on the philosophy and the importance of wealth management for a mu'min and a muttaqi. Within the Quran, you have ayat that speak about as you, as a mu'min, upon whom is it wajib to spend money upon. Obligations, fathers, mothers, children, wives, on the masakin, on the fukara, the hukuk shar'i, from the Sahm Imam and the Sahm Sadat, all this outlined within the Quran. This is an entire bahath on its own. Adab and akhlaq of spending money, or adab and akhlaq of giving charity. And inshallah, this is our topic for tomorrow, inshallah. You find that within the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala outlines for us two categories of people. Both of them spend in the way of Allah. Both of them spend in the way of Allah, but one goes towards Jannah and the other one goes towards Jahannam. Wal ayadu billah. You say, Ajib, how is it that a person who spent in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes to Jahannam? Hi, inshallah, this is our bahat for tomorrow. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Usually we don't have the habit of using PowerPoint, but because the verses that we're looking at is a tafsir oriented discussion, and inshallah month of Shahrul Ramadan, Shahrul Quran, to look at the Quran is thawab, to read every verse of the Quran is thawab. In fact, we have hadith sharif that for every verse of Quran you read inside of Shahrul Ramadan, you get the thawab of an entire Khatmul Quran. This is from the barakat of Shahrul Ramadan. So inshallah, the verses that we will be reciting, hopefully inshallah, the Jama'ah Ikhwan within the AV room, they have the slides up inshallah. Hopefully you are able to see them. Tayyib. So from the sifat of the muttaqi, the person who has taqwa, is that they spend wealth in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Suratul Anfal. Verse number 2, 3 and 4. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Innamal mu'minuna alladhina idha dhukira Allahu wajilat kulubuhum wa idha tuliyat alayhim ayatuhu zadathum imana wa ala rabbihim yatawakkalun. Properties and the characteristics of the mu'min. Who is the mu'min? We say that our Imam is Amirul Mu'minin. Amirul Mu'minin, yani the prince, the king of all the believers. So I have to aim to be a mu'min such that I can qualify and say him to be my Amir. What is the sifat from these mu'min? First, look at the word innama. I don't think the translation has this, and it's important that us Shi'as work on an English translation. Innama adawatul hasr, yani exclusivity. There cannot be any other character. The mu'min exclusively is restricted to those people who have these following traits within them. A mu'min exclusively is who? Number one, those when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is remembered, their hearts are overcome with fear and with khushu and humbleness and submission. And when the verses of Allah are recited upon them, their iman increases. And they have tawakkul ala Allah. Alladhina yukimuna salat, those who uphold the prayer. Wa mimma razaqnahum yunfikun, and from the rizq and the wealth that we have given them, they spend in the way of Allah. This, ahibba'i, verse of the Quran is a summary of the entire life of Ummul Mu'mineen Sayyida Khadija salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayha. She is from those women. When the entire Hijaz rejected the message of Rasulullah, she believed in the message of Rasulullah. In fact, Sayyida Khadija was the first woman to believe in Islam. When you come back to the hadith and you have from books of the Amma as well as the Khassa, that Rasulullah, when he was publicly, Jibreel came down and then we don't say appointed him as a Nabi because he was already a Nabi. But when he publicized this message, yani bi'tha, the commandment to publicize the message, you find that the first household in which Salah was recited, Rasulullah recited the Salat, and behind him Amirul Mu'mineen, and behind her Sayyidah Khadija. According to historians, for 7 years before the command of Salat was made public and wajib to the rest of the believers, for 7 years Rasulullah, Amir al-Mu'mineen and Sayyidah Khadija recited Salat. 7 years before anybody else. The first believer. Not only did she believe in the message of Rasulullah, because when you look at the hadith of the Bi'tha, you find that historians narrate you have in Manaqib that Rasulullah had the habit of doing i'tikaf in the cave of Hira every year in Shahr Ramadan, for even before he was appointed as a prophet, where he would go there and meditate and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Together with Rasulullah, Sayyidah Khadija and Amirul Mu'mineen used to spend time in i'tikaf. Sayyidah Khadija was a believer and a person who was in a state of intidar, awaiting for the proclamation of Rasulullah. Because our hadith state and our literature state, there was this group of individuals within Makkah who were from the Hanafiyin, yani the followers of the true religion of Nabi Ibrahim, awaiting for this final prophet who would come and announce this message. Sayyidah Khadija was a believer even before Rasulullah. And Ziyarat Waritha is an attestation to this. When you address Imam al-Hussein, you say, Ashhadu annaka kunta nuran fil aslab al-shamikha wal arhamil mutahhara. We say in this ziyarah of Ziyarat al-Waritha, Ya Imam al-Hussein, you are a nur that was transferred in the backs of pious women, and a nur that was transferred in the wombs of pure women. Mutahhara, yani tahara, from the najasa of shirk. For you find that this is that Sayyidah Khadija al-Kubra al-Mu'mineen. Her entire wealth, mimma razaqnahum yunfikun. She didn't spend a part of her wealth. She gave her entire wealth in the way of Islam. Such that historians mention that Sayyidah Khadija's wealth was on one hand and the wealth of the entire Hijaz on the other hand. If you could quantify this amount of wealth that she had, you find that during the time of her martyrdom, she does not even own enough money to buy a kafan that can cover the entire body. A woman who had this much wealth, and she gave it in the way of Islam, in the way of Rasulullah, with her full heart and her full love. Had it not been for the wealth of Sayyidah Khadija, Islam would not have prospered. It was the wealth of Sayyidah Khadija that funded the expedition of the Muhajirin from Mecca towards Abyssinia under Ja'far al-Tayyar. It was this wealth of Sayyidah Khadija that then allowed Ja'far al-Tayyar to spread Islam within East and North Africa at that time. It was this wealth of Sayyidah Khadija which Rasulullah would then use to free the persecuted Muslims who were the slaves of the Quraysh. It was this wealth of Sayyidah Khadija that kept the believers alive when they were under embargo and when they were boycotted in the valley of Abu Talib. For 4 years, you notice this jihad of Sayyidah Khadija, and we need to take steps and walk in the seerah of Sayyidah Khadija, a woman who spent wealth unconditionally for the sake of Islam, unconditionally for the sake of Rasulullah. Where are we from the seerah of Sayyidah Khadija? Sometimes one simple affair needs to be done in tabligh. People want to distribute Nahjul Balagha. There has to be a repair in the mosque, or there has to be a donation for some program of Imam al-Hussein or any one of the Ahlul Bayt. Day and night we have to make announcement. Contribute to the fund, contribute to the fund, as if we are begging. Where is that? I'm not saying this happens in our center, but generally as an attitude. Where is that spirit of Sayyidah Khadija, that you invest in Islam and invest in the tabligh of Islam even before being asked? This is one. Number two, she faced not only an economic embargo, because when they were restricted to the Sha'b of Abu Talib alayhi salam, this was an economic embargo imposed upon them by the entire Hijaz for 4 years. Nobody from Hijaz, from the Quraysh, were allowed to sell any sort of food commodity or even let them out of the Sha'b in order to gain access to water. No one was allowed to marry from them. No one was allowed to trade with them. And there was this embargo, and you could say, in essence, an exile within the Sha'b, the valley of Abu Talib. Sayyidah Khadija, who was the most prominent trader or entrepreneur, whatever you want to call her, but with this maqam of respect, she never compromised her hijab or her iffa or her chastity in the course of this wealth that she gained. This woman of prominence and stature and dignity, can you imagine that she is exiled into a valley and people are not even willing to sell her any sort of food commodity? She not only sacrificed her wealth, but even her social status within the community. If it was for the sake of Islam and the sake of Rasulullah, let this social status go. Important thing, Islam remains alive. Now we have that within us. These are the characters we learn from Ummul Mu'mineen. Not characters from an Ummul Mu'mineen who fights against the Imam Zaman of her time. Sayyidah Khadija, she was socially boycotted by all the women. Do you know when a woman is most, or one of the times she's most vulnerable? When she's in a state of pregnancy, when she's expecting. You find that when she was expecting Sayyidati Nisa al-Alameen Fatimah al-Zahra alayha salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. You find that the historians mention that the entire women of Quraysh refused to talk to Sayyidah Khadija. They made her into a social outcast. Why? Because of her belief in the message of Rasulullah and the amount of wealth that she spent in the cause of Rasulullah. She became a social outcast. Do you know the implications of being a social outcast? When no one within a community acknowledges even your existence, leave aside your status and your being. She didn't say, no, let Islam take a back seat. She said, no, Islam comes first and everything else takes a back seat. These are the lessons that you take from Sayyidah Khadija. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Tayyib. Spending from our wealth, and our time is almost going to be up in 5 minutes, so we move on to the next few verses so that there is a takmila and some sort of closure within this mahath. You find that spending from our wealth is an essential part of gaining taqwa. So long as you have taqwa, you can gain hidayah from the Quran. So if a person wants to seek guidance from the Quran, the first thing, or one of the first things he has to do is dig deep into his pockets. Because you cannot seek guidance from the Quran so long as you are attached to this dunya. Number one. Number two, exclusivity from the alamat of a mu'min is that he spends in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is number two. Number three, Suratul Anfal. Shahr Ramadan is the month of istighfar. within the time or during the time of iftar, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frees 1 million people from nar, Jahannam. During the time of adhan, during the time of iftar. And you say, Allahumma laka sumtu wa ala rizqika aftart. Hadith Sharif, 1 million people are freed from nar, Jahannam. Mu'aib at the time of iftar, when Allah is freeing people from Jahannam, Ani, I'm entering into Jahannam because of ghiba and namima. Aje iftar ma'ali ayo, nenu khawano makai dambi na tu ne, iftar ma'kai liayo, sharam wagar no manos, awajawa iftar liayo. Yes or no? Allah is taking people away from Jahannam. Ehna, mashallah, Jabran, by force we went to enter into Jahannam. For the time of iftar is a time of istighfar. Take value of these times. One of the conditions for istighfar to be accepted is that you spend money in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. Surah Al-Anfal, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, verse 104. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, verse 104. Alam ya'lamu anna Allah huwa yakbalu tawba an ibadih. Do you not know that it is Allah who accepts the tawbah of the people? When you find a person and you know his reputation is like this or like that, and he comes to the mosque in Shahr Ramadan, don't point a finger at him. Perhaps during Shahr Ramadan he seeks forgiveness from Allah. Allah is the one who accepts tawbah. Are we in a position to judge? No. أن الله هو يقبل التوبة عن عباده. Number one, ويأخذ الصدقات وأن الله هو التواب Rahim. So you find that in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mixes or joins together the concept of seeking istighfar and tawbah and the concept of sadaqah. Sadaqah in this sense, meaning spending money in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For we understand that an important part of istighfar for us to be forgiven our sins, we need to contribute towards the cause of Allah and the cause of the religion. Laylatul Qadr is coming up. We are all, who is there anybody who can say that you're not in need of any sort of istighfar? We're all muhtaj. We are all needy of tawbah and istighfar. And one of the best ways to secure forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to spend in the way of Allah within all the causes, be it humanitarian or tabligh or whatnot. Baqiyatul kalam inshallah we will leave for tomorrow. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Istishhad Sayyida Ummul Mu'mineen Sayyida Khadija. And we say istishhad. It was her martyrdom on a day like this, because she lost her life due to the weakness and the trials and the tribulations and the sufferings that she faced in the Shi'ab of Abu Talib, 4 years under siege. The hadith say, the Mufassirin say that their children and the people of Bani Quraysh or Bani Hashim, they would be eating the leaves. And there are times Sayyidah Khadija would eat a single date over a course of 3 or 4 days. Allahu Akbar. The weakness from all the trials and the tribulations overcame Sayyidah Ummul Mu'mineen until the day of her Shahadah, on a day like this. Allah. Rasulullah is given the news that his wife Sayyidah Khadija has now left this dunya and has gone into the next realm. Rasulullah begins to cry. The ceremony of the ghusl takes place and the hunut. And when it was time for the kafan, Rasulullah came with the kafan. Allah, Sayyidah Khadija Madhluma, who spent her wealth in the way of Allah, when they put the kafan on top of Sayyidah Khadija, they found that if they covered the head, the legs are exposed, and if they cover the legs, the head is exposed. Allahu Akbar. Rasulullah cried out, he said, Ya Allah, this is Sayyidah Khadija who spent everything she had for you. The narrations mention Jibreel came down with 5 kafans. Allahu Akbar. One for Sayyidah Khadija, one for Rasulullah, one for Amirul Mu'mineen, one for Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra, one for Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba. They say that there is no kafan for Abu Abdullah. Allah, Allah. Allah. Rasulullah begins to weep. He says, Ya Rasulullah, the tragedy of Mu'mineen is great, but the tragedy of Karbala, it has left a wound in the hearts of the Mu'mineen and the Muttaqeen until Yawmul Qiyamah. And even if the kafan had come from Jibreel, I don't know how Imam Sajjad would have used this kafan. The narrations mention 13th of Muharram, Imam Sajjad comes back towards Karbala to bury the deceased. Imam al-Hussein and the rest of the companions, their body has been left under the burning sun on the plains for 3 days without a ghusl and a kafan. When Imam Sajjad comes to the body of Aba Abdullah, the historians mention that he struggled to lift the body of Imam al-Hussein. Allah, I know that it is difficult for a son to lift the body of his father, but Ya Sajjad, Ya Imam Zainul Abidin, where was the difficulty? They say that when Imam Sajjad tried to lift the body of Imam from the right side, the left side of the body would fall. Imam Sajjad lifts from the left side, the right side of the body falls. What happened? They trampled the body of Aba Abdullah. They broke every bone in the body of Imam al-Hussein. Allah. Imam Sajjad gathers the body of Imam al-Hussein. He lays it inside his grave, and then he walks towards the Khaymaga. He comes back with something within his arms. When they look closer, they see that this is the body of Ali al-Asghar. The narrations mention that Imam Sajjad put Ali al-Asghar on the chest of Imam al-Hussein. The poet says that it is as if Imam Sajjad heard the cry of Aba Abdullah, saying to him, my son Zainul Abidin, put him slowly on my chest. It is as if the wound of the neck is still fresh. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Matam Sayyida Khadija, Matam Ummul Mu'mineen. Ya Hussein.